Hello everyone, Leaf Reed here, and tonight we have one of my possibly favorite novels, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This just is, like all of Dostoevsky's work, which I haven't read a ton of, it's just a character study, and it's just the extremes of thought. I can kind of give you a very quick summary version. So it takes place in St. Petersburg, I think. And the main character of the book is Rodya Rodovich Raskolnikov, something like that. But everyone calls him Raskolnikov. And he's a young student going to the university, renting an apartment in the city, and his landlord is this old lady who is awful. She treats all of her guests or all of her patrons poorly. She is mean, she is spiteful, she demands rent. Raskolnikov is under pressure, already behind on payments. His family is sending him money, but he doesn't have enough. And this evil old woman is kind of hounding him and other people in her apartment, and everyone hates her. Everyone hates her universally. So Raskolnikov, in his fury or his deep thought or whatever, he comes up with the idea to murder his landlord, basically. And so what he plans, and he plans it all out, he thinks it up. Having reached such conclusions, he decided that he personally was immune. While he carried out his plan, his judgment and will would remain sound, for the simple reason that what he planned to do was not a crime. And so essentially what Raskolnikov does is he grabs a hatchet and he goes up to her room one evening, and he ends up going up behind her and bringing the hatchet down right on her head and just immediately killing her. But if I recall correctly, there's also the niece or the granddaughter or some sister, or there's some other woman who's there as well. And Raskolnikov sees her, and suddenly he has to realize he has to kill her as well, which he does. So now he's killed two people, one of them essentially innocent. Raskolnikov leaves, and he deals with the guilt of what he has done. And there are a few other characters he meets. One of them is a government official in the bar who is spending the last of his rubles on vodka and drinking his days away. He simply, doesn't care. I believe it says he also has a wife and children, but he can't even spare money for them, and he's just trapped in this downward spiral of spending money on liquor and decaying, basically. There's also a girl called Sophia, who is Raskolnikov's neighbor, I believe, and she kind of is in the Christian faith, and I believe she tries to convert him or give him a pamphlet or something. And there's also, of course, the investigator, but essentially he's the investigator, and he kind of befriends Raskolnikov, and the way he talks to him is in a manner of as honestly, he reminds me of Columbo a bit. He's like, oh, I noticed this, I noticed that. And so he's very casual, just noticing things. And of course, what happens is, over the course of the investigation, they kind of corner Raskolnikov. And eventually there's some scene where they're talking about the holes in Raskolnikov's socks or something, and he's sitting on the floor, and the whole story is about processing the guilt of what he's done and realizing that even though he's gotten away with it, that he's still punished. He still punishes himself and he can't escape his own conscience, which knows he did something wrong. And that's really what the book is about. It's about how he committed this sin, but he is unable to confront himself about it, and he lives this double life of chaos that he can't concede with. And essentially, he eventually, of course, at the end of the book, he confesses, and Sonia is kind of there to help him through his prison sentence. And it's kind of like it's seen as this prison sentence is a good thing, where he's out in a field chopping wood or something at the end of the book. And Sonia is saying that, and he's saying that, it was through Sonia and through Christ that he found salvation, that for this murder he could atone for it in some way, and that actually gave him peace and hope in his heart. And that's basically the whole book. But of course, the journey of how we get there and how it describes psychology of Raskolnikov and how it defines it is the interesting dynamic adventure that is a character study of a seemingly justified murderer. I'll just read like a bit of this to give you a bit of Dostoevsky's style. To Raskolnikov, he was a man who had his mind set on something, a man who was keeping something to himself. It must be several days now since you've talked to anybody, Raskolnikov said. Just about. You're probably surprised to find me so easygoing. No, I'm surprised to find you too easygoing. Because the rudeness of your questions didn't offend me? Is that it? Why should I be offended? You asked, I answered. He said with a remarkable expression of good humor. You know, he added pensively, there's nothing that interests me much, especially now that I'm not doing anything. You may think very well that I'm after something. I said so myself, especially since I have business that concerns your sister. But I tell you frankly that I'm very bored. These last 3 days especially, I was actually delighted I found you. Now, don't get angry, Rodia Rodinovich, but to me it seems as if you are terribly strange yourself. Somehow, whatever you say, you've got something inside you. Inside you now. I mean now. Not just this very moment, but now in general. Well, I won't. Oh, don't frown. But I'm not such a bear as all that. Raskolnikov looked at him darkly. You might not be a bear at all. It strikes me you come off quite good society. At least you know how to behave respectably sometimes. And anyway, so that's kind of a taste of Dostoevsky's style. So it is actually not too hard to read. It feels like a modern novel. It feels like all the characters are characters. They talk in predictive patterns. It's easy to read, more or less. And one of the cornerstones of good literature. It's actually not terribly long. I would say it's medium high length. But yeah, it's a fine novel, and it's interesting. And it's just a character study of that style. There's always someone I think we all would like to murder in our lives that we just want to disappear. And it's kind of the idea of dealing with that as a reality. If we actually fell through with those fantasies, the person that we would become is a person that would have to deal with it. And it's kind of like in the Bible, they have things like thou shalt not kill, because if you kill someone, there's no way for you to be forgiven for that. If you steal something, if you hurt someone, if you do all these bad things, it's kind of saying that your mind on its own will punish you irregardless if you get away with it. Because you ultimately have this underlying guilt in your heart that if you know you did something wrong and you know you got away with it, you want to be punished in a weird way, unless you're a sociopath, I guess. But that's the book. It's about, you can't do the crime, don't do the time. Hey, buddy. That's a nice, it's a nice short version of it. But yeah, no, it's a fun read, I would say, actually. But yeah, no, that's Crime and Punishment. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and pretty iconic. Anyway, that's it. See you guys. Keep reading.